Welcome to day 76. This is Deuteronomy the end of chapter 16 and into the beginning of chapter 21. Really cool stuff again. I just loving how much we're getting into some kind of cool things in books that people typically just kind of pass over and read through quickly. So our founding fathers in America here have taken a lot of things from the Bible and introduced them into our Constitution and the laws that we have. 10 Commandments are on the doors to the into the house. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Appoint judges. This is really pretty cool here. So in 16:8, it says 16:18. I guess I put the wrong thing here. 16:18. It says, appoint judges and officials for yourselves from each of your tribes in all the towns the Lord your God is giving you. They must judge the people fairly. Okay, so what we're getting from this is Moses couldn't do it all, so God, he went to God and said, how can I do it all? And Moses said, select 70 people or how many people, and we'll divide up what we should do. Well, all those people died away, and they're getting ready to go into the land, and they're going to separate. So God is reiterating, hey, you got to select judges and officials to divide everything up evenly. And so that kind of gets us into the Kings, which will be happening in the next few books. So I want to talk a little bit about what God is saying to them about the kings. If you know your Bible, you know that he didn't want the kings, but let me talk you through that a little bit. So in chapter 17, verse 14 and 15, starts out with the guidelines for how a king should be. You are about to enter the land the Lord your God is giving you. When you take it over and settle there, you may think, we should select a king to rule over us like the other nations around us. If this happens, be sure to select as king the man the Lord your God chooses. You must appoint a fellow Israelite. He may not be a foreigner. So a couple things here. One, we have judges. We have a leader. This is where we're getting our basis for our government in America. Okay? And we have court system, where we have a special court in 17:8. Suppose a case arises in a local court that is too hard for you to decide. For instance, whether someone is guilty of murder or only of manslaughter, or a difficult lawsuit or a case involving different kinds of assault. Take such legal cases to the place the Lord your God will choose. And it goes on and it says this is a special place, kind of like our Supreme Court is a special place. As it goes through the court system and it gets more difficult and it needs something special to be looked at. And the lower courts can't take it. So this is where we're getting our judicial system from, as well as part of our government. So in 17, 14, and 15 again, it talks about that. If you select a king, you have to select one that God says. And he can't be a foreigner. Well, you have to be an American citizen, born here, in general, okay, to be the president. You can be a leader in your town, you can be the mayor, you can be the governor of the state, if you're a foreigner, but you can't be the president, okay? And then it's alluded to what is going on here. In 1 Samuel, this is not mentioned on here, so you should write this down. In 1 Samuel, chapter 8, verses 4 through 19, this is talking about the Israelites asking for a king. So Samuel had appointed his sons as judges, and they were corrupt, and the people were sick of it. So they went to Samuel and said, you know what? This is what it says. Look, they told him, you are now old, and your sons are not like you. Give us a king to judge us like all the other nations. Okay. Samuel's displeased. He goes to the Lord, so Samuel passed on the Lord. This is verse 10. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to the people who were asking him for a king. This is how a king will reign over you. And it spends, all the way from 4 through 19 is kind of this conversation that's going on. This is how a king's going to rule over you, okay? The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and his charioteers, making them run before his chariots. Some of the generals and captains in his army, some will be forced to plow in his fields and harvest his crops. And some will make weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He'll take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and blah, 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 blah. It keeps on going. And God is trying to say, you don't want this. But back here in Deuteronomy is saying, if in the future you want a king, you got to choose the right person. And here's what a king should be like. Well, why do you do that? Well, because he's not bound by time. He knows what's going to happen. So he's telling them this, look for these things. And the other part in Samuel, it says, they want a king because they're rejecting me. That's what God told Samuel. So God's, you want to go through the fire? Go through the fire. Go ahead. And you know what? You're going to come back to me. So, this whole thing of going through situations is kind of a cleansing thing. Pain purifies the soul. That's actually biblical. And sometimes we have to go through it. The question is, are you going through it with God or are you going through it by yourself? It's pretty horrible to see people go through tragedy without God. So that was an important thing about what is happening. And then we finally have our final king, which is going to be Jesus. He's the ruler of everything. The king must be humble. It must be not necessarily calmer, but he must be able to understand and cope with what the common people are going through. Now, you got your list. Medium psychics and witchcraft and sorcerers. Another thing to add to this would be chapter 18, verses 10, 11, and 14. So let's read those. Verse 10 from chapter 18. For example, never sacrifice your son or daughter as a burnt offering. And do not let your people practice fortune telling, or use sorcery, or interpret omens, or engage in witchcraft, or cast spells, verse 11, or function as mediums or psychics, or call forth the spirits of the dead. It doesn't say they can't do it. It says don't allow this to happen. Verse 14, the nations you are about to displace consult sorcerers and fortune tellers, but the Lord your God forbids to do such things. This is a detestable thing to God. So I added that to my list of witchcraft, mediums, and psychics. Eye for an eye. I hear this all the time. Well, he hurt me, so I'm going to hurt him. Well, that's eye for an eye, right? Well, let's read our Bible and find out really what that means. Chapter 19, verse 14 through 21. And this is not the only reference for eye for an eye, but I'm going to read this part. Verses 14 through 21. I'm not going to read the whole thing, okay? So listen to what it's saying. 18. The judges must investigate the case thoroughly. Okay? If the accuser has brought false charges against his fellow Israelite, you must impose on the accuser the sentence he intended for the other person. In this way, you will purge such evil from among you. Okay, then the rest of the people will hear about it and be afraid to do such an evil thing. Verse 21. You must show no pity for the guilty. Your rule should be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. You don't get to do it. You take it to the judges, the officials. And our system, our punishment, the sentencing must match the crime. Life for life. This is how our government is supposed to be run. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. That's saying we have to match the punishment with the crime. And it has to be followed through. But not for us to do it. We are to present this to our justice system and let justice find its way. Are there corrupt justices? Yes. But we have bred this into being. Okay? There are good justices as well. And hopefully most justice is being handed out fairly. But that's where that comes from. So eye for an eye doesn't mean you get to shoot the guy because he shot you. That's not what it means. Okay? If he murders somebody, then technically he should be killed as well, but it has to go through the judicial system. Last thing, destroy every living thing. I just want to beat this into you so you get this. And this is the problem. Well, I guess one of the problems with what has happened with Israel. Destroy every living thing. Chapter 20, verse 16. In those towns. What towns? The land of the Canaanites. Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Okay? In those towns that the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession, destroy every living thing. It doesn't say all but the people. It doesn't say all the men, but not the women and children. It says every living thing. You must completely destroy the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, just as the Lord your God has commanded you. Pretty intense thing that he was telling the Israelites to do. And you remember, these people turned their backs on God a long time ago. 400 years of the Israelites, of the Hebrews in slavery, coming out to allow their sin to run its course. Remember that way back in Genesis? To allow the sin to run its course. God himself would send things into that land ahead of the Israelites to either lower the population or drive those people away. Whoever is left in that land, in those cities, he says they must be destroyed. Every living thing. And that is day 76. I'll see you tomorrow.